Hello, everyone. We should be live right now. I'm getting everything set up. I got to add this link here to bringmetolife.com, which the link for our afternoons with the dudes is bringmetolife.com/AWTD. And that will have our afternoons with the dudes. I'll have every episode and anytime for our lives. If you go there, we got a live chat. I'm gonna let everybody know that they can refresh the page now and listen to the episode. So what we're doing here with afternoons with the dudes is we're creating an open space for men, for masculine people to come together to talk about the things that may be a little taboo or something that for some reason the masculine has been blocked from speaking about or expressing or whatever, because the masculine throughout time, and we'll talk about this with all of our speakers today, it's been really skewed so that it's not macho, it's not manly to cry or to talk about your feelings or to express yourself in ways. And I think that's all breaking down. It's all breaking down, and especially this year we're seeing so many things happen. Gender fluidity, we're seeing more people being open and expressive and being okay with crying even if you're a man, or saying I'm afraid or whatever it might be. And so this whole intention is to bring men together, bring masculine together, and kind of confront all this stuff, confront all the things that are happening, and maybe even come out with some opinions or some options that we could, bring the masculine back to a healthy balance with the feminine. So if anybody wants to raise their hand right now, I'll go to you in a minute. We're going to have everybody introduce themselves and get, a take on everybody's perspective. We have a lot of men here. They're all very, very respectful and very nice, very polite people because nobody's raising their hand yet. So they're all, letting each other go. And if nobody wants to go first, then I will call on somebody, which is totally okay. And I see. Okay, so I didn't see anybody hand. Okay, Joe Geiger's got his hand raised. We'll go over to Joe. Joe, go ahead, introduce yourself. Let everybody know where you're at, and all that good stuff. Make sure to unmute yourself. There you go.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Joe Geiger. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm a new resident out here. Um, I'm a Sui Reiki master. I just got started, um, launched all my socials yesterday for my business stuff. So I'm currently trying to, thanks for the support. Thank you. I'm just getting started out here. My partner, she's out on a job interview right now. This is kind of like a little paradise away from all the chaos out here in the mountains. It's super, super beautiful. I'm involved in a men's group called Sacred Sons. If anybody's heard of it, it's awesome. If you haven't, check it out. Um, yeah, just kind of have an optimistic outlook on life, even though the political situation across this planet is insane. Always got to stay positive, but got to be realistic.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Definitely. And if anybody has any questions for Joe, you can type them out in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask him. But I know you and I, Joe, have talked about this idea of, being a more healthy version of the masculine.
hmm
So, what does it mean to you to open that up?
Um, okay. So to kind of expand on what you had said during the intro about how there is not a safe space for men to open up. Um, yeah, I mean, I really think that there aren't many safe spaces for men to open up. Our culture, especially here in America, be a badass, you know, like you can't express yourself or you're coined a pussy, or you're weak, or you're acting like a girl. Um, and what that does is that creates toxic masculinity. Um, it per it perpetuates abusive relationships. Perpetuates um, abusive parenting. Crime rates go up because men don't know how to deal with their feelings and their emotions. Um, it just makes a really unhealthy situation, and it karmically just continues generation to generation to generation. So, Afternoon with the Dudes, or Sacred Sons, or any men's circle for that, is a safe space for men to come together to bring all of themselves, no matter what that is, all of the baggage, all of the pain, all of the anger, all of the things to celebrate, you know, and to come together and to be able to create a container where that vulnerability can be expressed, where men can lay down the armor and really find permission. And I think it's important for men to get permission from other men to be vulnerable. You know, there are some things that we as men sometimes feel like we can't talk about in front of women because we'll be afraid that we'll be labeled as, oh, you're just a misogynist, or, oh, you're being sexist. But there's real trauma in our DNA and in our upbringings that we might not even be aware of, behaviors and things that we're exhibiting that might be unconsciously sexist or misogynistic or whatever, or even just offensive or racist. You can go on and on and on. And I think that if men are able to own their feelings and recognize them and allow them to be expressed in a very healthy way, whether that's through a meditation practice or a primal movement or weightlifting or running or whatever, just as long as it's not explosive and destructive, then I think it's important. I hope I wasn't rambling there.
Mm-hmm.
So much in my head.
Right, and that's why we're hosting these afternoon shows to get those things out. So thank you, Joe. We're going to move on now to Joseph. So Joseph, if you want to unmute yourself and tell us where you are right now, and maybe a little bit about this topic, what it means to you. We got Joseph.
Okay, can everybody hear me all right? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Joseph Anthony Marlow, and it's wonderful to be here today to be having this discussion about opening up male vulnerability. I am a personal development coach and have been on a endeavor to live this life to the fullest and to really come to such a profound space of peace within myself that every moment feels, like I can be there for it. So it's wonderful to be here to have this conversation because it's just going along with what fellow Joe said, just to say, I always feel like all Joes are part of a club. So it's good to meet another one. It's like when we as men allow ourselves to have all of ourselves be there, our frustration, our shame, our guilt, our anxiety, and just allowing ourselves to be present with those.
Hey Joseph, could you hold your mic up so you could be a little bit more clear for everyone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does this sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds better.
Okay, cool. So basically what I'm getting at is that, we as men see that we have a lot of emotions. We see that we are actually like way more sensitive and way more vulnerable than we may give ourselves credit for. So it's in some sense allowing ourselves to have all of ourselves to be here. I love that. That's kind of the big thing I'm on right now. Currently, I'm in California and on this grand spiritual Celestine prophecy type adventure that is blowing my mind. And right now I can say I feel like I'm living like life purpose thing right now, and what that looks like for me is just allowing myself to believe in like the potential that is within all of us, whatever that looks like for anyone, that we all have an ability to maximize and like become something more what we know ourselves to be. So, I feel like a good balance part of masculinity is like allowing ourselves to feel into those like really, that really, uh, inner dancer, the romancer, the dude who just feels so sexy and incredible in themselves that it's just like, yeah, like feeling really good about it. That's sort of along with coaching, that's kind of more of the intention that I seek to provide here is you know, just as you're doing here, CeeLo, is just like holding that space open for us men to really come to that profound place of peace and seeing vulnerability with brotherhood. I'm a triplet, and so I was born here with two brothers from the get-go. And so it's given me a view of an experience of brotherhood that is so profound and so powerful that like it can transform the world, like knights or something like that, just bands together of like pure brotherhood can make anything happen. But yeah, that's a little bit of what I'm about, and I look forward to having more good conversations with y'all. Good to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for being here. And if anybody has any questions for Joseph right now, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away. But I'm really grateful to have you here, Joseph. I know you do really a lot of beautiful things, and it's just great to have all you wonderful men here. So we'll go next
Good to be
to
here.
Tony. Go ahead and if you can, and mute yourself and let us know where you are and what this topic means to you.
Hi, I'm really grateful to be on this this live theater. Geren. I am from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I'm living in the house that I'm going to be only living in for another about 20 days before I move into a new home with one of my brothers and a longtime friend. We do a network here in Grand Rapids called the Grand Rapids Autonomous Support System, and we meet every week about various topics and like checking in with each other and seeing how we're doing and how we can support one another and try to enact actions in our community that can serve the community better on a ground level instead of relying on institutional power. And it's been an amazing 5 years of doing this work. And now it's getting to the point where we're going to be able to have a space to operate out of that we have a contract with, which is going to be absolutely beautiful. It's a music venue, which we're going to have amazing events at. And basically, this topic means a lot to me, especially because for most of my life, I've identified myself as a man. So I have a lot to draw from in that aspect and many experiences with the feminine and with relationships that have really shown a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of like have shown where the conditioning resides within me. I feel like through those relationships, I've been able to bear witness to that, but also it's also sad to recognize that like through those experiences, partners have been hurt because there's so much trauma in the masculine. There's so much attended to emotions and conditioning that kind of blocks our true nature from coming through, what it really means to live into that masculinity. And it's kind of sad. You see it unfolding in our world today. with different like leaders in society, and we're starting to see like in the music industry, artists, like things coming out about them and their unmanaged aggression and their unmanaged like, like energy, and trauma, and how that has hurt women. And so I think spaces like this really allow us to bear witness to each other's souls and each other's journeys, and recognize that we don't have to shield from the world all the time, and try to put up this like this thing, um this like tail feather, or this image of like trying to be, and not allow ourselves to really feel. And that's what I'm trying to do in my everyday life, is just be authentic as possible, and literally like in every single moment allow for the moment to be what it is, and allow for the rising of whatever energy is coming through to guide me to my next actions, and communicate. I feel like that's the biggest thing that we can do as men, is just communicate through what it is we're experiencing, even if we feel the person or the woman or the whoever it is isn't going to understand what we're saying. It's important for us to do it so it's coming out, and so it can be acknowledged, um, by ourselves, and then there's a possibility of that being received on the other side, or the feminine has the choice to care, or recognize that as just your journey and listening. um, it's not the job of partners to handle our shit, um, but it's I think it's really, really important to communicate what shit is going on. um, so yeah, I don't know, I'm really grateful for this opportunity. This is great.
Awesome. Well, grateful to have you on here. And if anybody has any questions for Tony, go ahead and unmute and ask him away. But, I totally agree with you that, as men, we definitely need to learn how to communicate, because growing up, my dad had such a hard time communicating really anything to me, or to any of my brothers, or to even my mom. And he eventually learned to do it through writing notes, but still, like, being able to learn, as men, how to properly communicate our feelings and emotions and our trauma is really powerful. So thank you, Tony, for being here. We're going to move on now to
That was well said,
Mike.
Tony. Good job.
Thank you.
Cool.
Hey
So
guys,
Mike, go ahead.
thank you. Tony, that was beautifully said, and Joseph, awesome to follow that up. So yeah, I'm Mike Warren, and I just want to just get right into it, because I feel like we're really like bringing up the blockages and the conditioning. And I just want to say how excited I am to be a part of this, because this is kind of like the new setup. The new men's group is like Zoom calls, and get into your safe space, and then be able to tap into that heart center and now connect from here. Because now I'm in a park, and I don't know where you guys are, but I assume you're in a place that you're comfortable, you're open. We're able to actually like ground in and communicate, which Tony really said well.
Hey,
there.
Mike.
And I think that is. Oh, can I not be heard right?
I'm not sure what it is. It sounds like there's a knocking or clicking, and you went out for a little bit.
Okay.
We could still hear you, but it got a little bit quieter.
Okay. Am I good now?
You're a little bit louder now.
All right. So the communication and the ability to hold the space necessary is what I feel. Yeah, I kind of lost my flow there. One breath. I think that what we're doing from this point forward is going to really catalyze the future of how men could use quantum feedback and to understand that there is a needed feedback loop between other men that is going to allow us to grow and blossom into the next awakening of the masculine. And it's just what an exciting time. And I feel really blessed to be a part of it. And I'm a yogi, sound healer practitioner, and I plan to be serving in this field for the rest of my life. And I'm very excited to make these new connections. And yeah, hold the space for any of you if you ever need or feel so called. Yeah, so one thing I wanted to touch on was focusing on the heart with a capital A, because it truly is an art, the heart of flow. And if I had a podcast, that would be the name of it, The Heart of Flow. I feel it's very necessary for men to stop overthinking so much and to really allow themselves to expand into like a stream of their soul and just let go. Because we're so good at thinking, but we'll lock on and then we'll just keep overthinking. Instead, get locked on and let the flow. And I just feel that from a passionate state of being, it just comes. You don't even, it's not easy, it's not hard, it just is. And it's wonderful to be able to have these communal spaces with other heart-centered men to share this with.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. I think we're going to go over now to Ashton. So, Ashton, if you want to unmute yourself and let us know where you are and what this topic means to you.
All right. So good to be on here. Thank you so much, CeeLo, for organizing this and Project Bring Me to Life for giving us the platform. My name's Ashton Robertson. I make music under the name Spaceship Earth. And as well as I have an ambient project called Clouds. And I've been touring all over the last few years and meeting a lot of people and connecting with all different kinds of people. And this subject is really near and dear to my heart. Even before I got into music, I had been researching spirituality. And I think even spirituality is like an aspect of the feminine that's been lost. But I love what Mike was saying. I want to riff off that a little bit. Like, I really feel this huge shift as a collective. Like, everyone is so in their head, and we're really shifting from like thinking into feeling and getting more into our intuitive nature is really what a lot of the spiritual journey has been about for me. Like, for so long, I used to shove down my own feelings and have poor boundaries because I felt I needed to like man my way through situations, and I was dishonoring my own self and my own like health as well in a lot of ways. And as we're having this conversation, I'm really reflecting on how us, like as humanity, we've been disconnected from nature and Gaia, and this like more flowy, intuitive, like artistic reality. You know, everything in like a city is very structured and formed and just like planned and thought out, and we think we're so advanced, but nature is truly, you know, like doing so well without us. And I think as a species, as we get like retune ourselves and realign with nature and get in touch with the messages that she has to offer, that we have so much to learn and so much to grow from. And as well as like talking about the music industry, just as a musician, there's been a lot coming up against like about sexual abuse and even just crossing people's boundaries. There's a lot of that, but there's like, I think a root cause of that comes from being disconnected from our own feeling nature. And we're always so thinking and controlled by the ego and the mind. We're dragged around by our own desires that we don't have the like energetic space and feeling to really like feel what someone else is experiencing. And we might not understand we're crossing their boundaries. So the more you can realign with your body, get in touch with your body. I think like a meditation practice is like also another form of feminine nature. You know, it's like, it's very like masculine could be like outward and feminine could be like going inward. And being able to feel and through that meditation, you can feel what other people are feeling. You're like, oh, like I need to check myself, you know. There's so much of that we all need to learn. And yeah, I'm just stoked to be on here with everybody, and everyone has said such meaningful, powerful things, and I love you guys. So
Cool. Well, glad to have you. If anybody has anything they want to say to Ashton, go ahead. But, you know, I totally agree that we sort of become numb to our own empathy, our own feelings. And I see some shows, a lot of shows actually, where, the men are just forcing themselves on to women and other people. And I kind of think about that. I'm like, I don't understand how they could do that, because to me, I just can't help but feel the empathy for whatever that other person is going through when they're being like, pushed on. So it's
right.
it's crazy to think about. So that's a huge point that you brought up.
Thank you.
Yeah. And also, I would say that even just a few years ago, I maybe have crossed boundaries without realizing it, and like you said, just being more in my head than in my feelings, and feeling what other people are going through.
Yeah, it's like thousands of years of programming men have gone through, and it's in all of our DNA and the way we were raised, the way our culture brought us up, the like brainwashing we've gone through Hollywood and even like music, and the art industry, you know, whatever. It's like it like views women as an object, and like, you know, we don't see, it's like our culture doesn't see them as equals. And even in America, women don't even have equal pay at work. So it's like we have a way to go.
Definitely, we do have a way to go. So, all right, let's move on now over to Nick Mielnicki. Go ahead, unmute yourself and tell us where you're from and what this topic means to you.
Thanks, CeeLo. Thanks for having me today. And thank you, everyone, for sharing your time and joining us here today, all 8 of us. This is a large topic and no doubt very near and dear to our soul of souls. So I'm really excited to be here and share my perspective and to listen to all y'all. I really resonated with everything that everyone had said here. And maybe I'll touch on a few topics that was shared, but first I would like to say thank you and respect to all the men that came before us and our ancestors and all the different cycles and time periods and ways of thinking that we are building on top of and with, and some over. And let's see, I took some notes here. I really enjoyed what was shared in the beginning when we were talking about trauma in the DNA and from our upbringing. And we can really add in open communication and our own feelings, as Mike was chatting about. And I also have a lot of experience being trapped in my own mind and my own head, and have noticed that the more I implement patience with myself, I'm able to allow myself to be more authentic. And that helps me reveal to myself my own feelings. And then if I'm not able to communicate about those, I know to kind of turn more to my body and be like, what's going on here? And through there, I have been able to take many small steps over and over again to reach these deeper problems or gifts from the previous lineage to sit with and really uncover what is running me and what kind of unconscious, subconscious, habitual, cultural, power struggles, insecurities, misplaced desires, and things like this. And it's a very growing experience, and there's so many facets and tributaries to this giant river that is the masculine, that it's really an honor to be here today. It's really exciting for me. And thank you all for listening, and letting me share. And I'm actually really excited to hear what Brent has to say. And also, thank you again, CeeLo, for hosting this. You are a fantastic host, and you really assist all of us to really synergize and flow fluidly. So I'm really excited to get this going. Thank you.
Awesome. It's good to have you on another show with us. Nick's been there, as well as Ashton, since our very first episode of the Bring Me to Life podcast, which was 166 episodes ago. So, cool.
Wow.
Good run. Good run.
Absolutely. All right, Brent, let's go ahead, unmute yourself. Where are you at, and what does this topic mean to you?
Well, thanks so much for having me as part of the group. Can you hear me okay? Yep, okay. My name is Brent Marchand. I'm a writer, editor, and blogger on metaphysical subjects from Chicago. Some of you may also know me as the contributor of the CinemaScribe segments to Bring Me to Life Radio. This topic is really important to me because my feeling is it's about time that this is finally getting going. I mean, I grew up in a generation when these ideas were first sort of beginning to take root a little bit through things like the Beat Generation and the hippie movement and Flower Children and all that sort of thing. But it grew so very slowly because we were raised at a time when these things were not considered acceptable. A man was not supposed to show feelings because it was considered a sign of weakness. You know, we were told that, you know, women want strong men to protect them. And you'll never get a partner if you end up showing signs of being a coward or, you know, skittish about things. And as someone who was not hesitant to express my feelings when I was growing up, I just thought that was plain weird. My basic question was, if we are not supposed to express our feelings, then why do we have them in the first place? And I was, excuse me, I was amazed at how much resistance I met from a lot of other guys growing up who just couldn't understand me for being willing and wanting to express my feelings when I had them, when they were constantly saying, no, you can't say that, you can't do that. You just shut it down, stifle it, put it away. And over the years, I've seen this gradually start to change where people have been more willing to step forward and express their feelings, express their views. And I think it's nothing but healthy, personally. So I'm very glad that there's programs like this, that there are organized groups out in the world where this can be done. And, you know, one of the things I think that's important for me personally, too, is that being from Chicago, being in a city where everybody thinks everything is cold and impersonal, I think it's important to have a presence in a place like this to help provide some impetus to get the ball rolling in a place that supposedly is not welcoming to this kind of thing in the first place. So thank you to, you know, for inviting me to join this group. And I've really enjoyed listening to everything that the guys have had to say, and I look forward to seeing where we go from here.
Awesome. Well, it's really, really good to have you here, and we have a whole different perspective with you because you did grow up in a different generation and one that I think was even more like masculine, macho.
It really was. I mean, you know, we were the children of like World War II veterans. And they were part of a generation that didn't say anything about feelings for the most part. I mean, you know, I look at the case of my own dad, who was a World War II vet, and he was a very warm, loving, and gentle man, but getting him to express his feelings about anything was like pulling teeth. You know, he would just shut down, and if you asked him what was wrong, it was something like, nothing's wrong. It's okay. Don't worry about it. And, you know, it was a case where men were really only allowed to express feelings maybe within their own family, you know, toward their partners or their kids or other relatives. and it was okay at certain designated high emotion times like weddings or funerals, maybe let it out a little bit. But the rest of the time, no, it was just absolutely unacceptable. You just stayed on the straight and narrow. You didn't let your inner feelings surface. You kept it bottled up. And I think that's a big part of the reason why you had so many problems with alcoholism and mental stress, particularly for men when they got older, into their 50s and 60s. They face things like loss of career or loss of income at that age. Since they had never had a whole lot of experience being able to express their feelings, they didn't know how to deal with those things. And, you end up getting depression and suicide and all kinds of other stuff. And, I think being able to express your feelings now and being allowed to do it more readily than you once could is important, not just for one person's mental health and their handling of stress, but it also provides a very necessary release valve for letting this stuff out and not letting it build up to a toxic level where it ends up taking on really distorted and exaggerated forms that cause a lot of problems for people. So once again, my thanks for having this program. Thanks for having me as part of it. I really appreciate it. And like I say, I look forward to see where we go from here.
Definitely. If anybody has any questions for Brent, you could go ahead and unmute yourself and let him know. But I think you bring up a great point with, how many health problems have been created or amplified because of not being able to talk about these things. And growing up, I would often talk about it like you did, and my brothers, they were very closed off with their emotions, and me being the youngest brother was just like, wee, so
so many times it's almost really kind of curiously metaphorical too, because some of the things that I experienced when I was growing up really related to a lot of the things that I was experiencing in my life. For example, when I was growing up, I had quite a few respiratory problems, and a lot of that came from the fact that I felt like I was not being allowed a lot of times to express myself. So in a sense, I felt like I was being suffocated, and that manifested literally as a respiratory problem that reflected that. So it's very important that we really pay attention to these things, not only for the value of being able to let these feelings come out, but also for being able to understand that what they can actually transform into as physical manifestations in our bodies. And when it gets to that point, you're getting pretty far gone, and it gets harder to come back from that. Particularly when you get into much more serious and chronic conditions that you may not have a treatment for. So for me, it's a case of better safe than sorry to let this out up front, so it's not going to come back and bite you in the behind later on down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I just feel like we become so much stronger when we embrace all aspects of ourselves, and we feel better, we feel stronger, we are more able to do stuff. And I think that there's this sort of misconception where men are very in their brain, very thinking, and women are very intuitive. And I think that is true, but I also think that men are also very intuitive, and I believe that we all have aspects of feminine and masculine, and it's just a matter of which one is a little bit stronger. But we all do have intuition. So I'm gonna ask a question for everybody, and we'll kind of go in a line, and the question is, with your intuition, what do you believe was some of the reasons why our masculine energy has been treated and programmed the way it has? And anybody, if you would like to go first, you could raise your hand in there, or do that. But before we get into that, I saw Nick's hand go up. I would like all of us here in this video see if I can get it on that view, and just hold up our hands for a minute and kind of send energy to the divine masculine, to be healed, to be cleansed, to be loved. And then we're gonna take a deep breath in and we're gonna do an Om. So if you all want to unmute yourself right now, we can all do a group Om. All right, we're gonna take a deep breath in. Beautiful. All right, thank you, men. So I saw Nick's hand go up first, and you can unmute yourself, Nick, and let us know, what do you think happened with the masculine? What the F happened to it?
Well, I would like to start with saying that, and what we were just talking about, what came to mind was an exponential slope of repression. And I'm personally not one to say about when or where or how. All I can do is speak for what I can see now in our present day and call those the results of actions over time, or potentially even inaction over time. And on top of what Brent was sharing about some years ago and some decades ago, it was the norm for the man to basically, quote unquote, be the man. And that was termed with not being so sensitive. I mean, men were definitely emotional, but they wouldn't go into the label of sensitivity. I mean, they would celebrate heavily, they would be boastful and prideful, and they would be shows of strength. And that's how they would bond. Like, a part of the unhealed culture of today's era is a lot of them bond with making fun of each other. And to certain degrees, that's cool, whatever. But there's also some toxic aspects to that. So, just in the same way that quote unquote masculine men of our current past, there was strong things of that. You could look at like a hero or Superman or something, but then it could also go into the toxic and unhealthy realm, where now you see a man being that way to basically avoid what he's feeling inside. He may now think he's like the tough guy or the strong one or the cool guy or whatever. And now, if there is another one of those, now it's like two lions in the wild vying and combating for the territory and the females around. So we get into more of an animalistic, habitual, what's the word? I guess you could say more of a biological consciousness, where the person and their awareness and their attention is inside of their biology only. And generally, with the diet and the activity of those times in our current past, the body would have more energy flowing through its lower regions, and the energy would get more stagnant and blockaged in the lower regions. So then that could be looked at as kind of a damming up of the river. And then these lower energy centers kind of get overactive, and then and the higher energy centers and the even lower energy centers that we get with nature, those would become inactive because the water isn't flowing to them. So I just find it so fascinating, to be honest, because some of these uh, labeled toxic men or whatever, there have been many that have given great things to society and to culture and to women and to their children and peers, even if they are toxic or something like that, or unhealthy. So I feel that as we go forward, one of the most important things and the most real things is to have acceptance and forgiveness and compassion, because as we all know in this group, or I would assume that we all know in this group, we know not what we do. Because if we could really be in the person's shoes that we are doing the thing to, and feel how they're feeling and understand how they're feeling and know how they're feeling and seeing us, how they are seeing it, uh, generally we wouldn't be taking those similar actions. So I guess to sum this all up, I would say why or how this is all occurring, I would say it's a disconnection with nature and an imbalance of the biological body, because it is my belief that when the body is healthy and maintained, all psychology, energy, mental, emotional, spiritual, all of that stuff, it comes together like a magnetic force. It comes together like a life force, and it becomes one with nature naturally, because that's what its origins are. So yeah, definitely just balancing it all up and being authentic. If someone's being poopy or crappy, I would prefer them to be that way and own it than try to repress it. And now I'm feeling weird because I can feel that they aren't expressing themselves. Because I mean, I'm going to handle myself and communicate my boundaries. And if I, I would just, if I could hold the space for everyone, I would say just be authentically you. And that's where you're at. And being where you're at is better than trying to be where someone else is at.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. I know Joe had his hand up, so if you want to unmute yourself and comment either on what Nick has said, or you could even go further. Joseph, are you there?
Yeah, right here.
Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Nick. Wow, that is such a beautiful excerpt right there, and I'd like to follow up with that and really going into the asking the questions of why. Why has this happened to masculine energy? Why is it that we are susceptible to forms of energetic and emotional manipulation that cause us to do things that we don't quite understand? You know, I had a moment one time where I was in an exchange with someone, and the person was saying everything like it was. This is a very like interesting thing, because this person was saying a very intact, present piece of information, and my intuition could receive that and understand that and know that as like, okay, this is what this person is saying. But then when I began to speak, I began to say I began to react in a way that took it personally. I began to uh, internalize what was being said and project it in a way that was, some way I was getting offended, when the point of it was that it was not. So it led me into this whole thing of like, why is it that there are things within us that just come through us that we may not understand fully? And the best way that I can kind of put this through is, sort of in the line of like, I study a lot of prophecy and a lot of like information that has us realizing a point to our experience. And so what I believe has happened to masculine energy is that we are actually in this very transformative space of experience, where we are in some sense returning back to the pure strength and the intelligence of like the divine masculine, like returning back to that like ancient code, and then bring it into this modern time today. So I believe what had to happen in order for this process to work out is that we had to actually like go dark. We had to kind of like, be in the place of not knowing what that was like in order for us to understand and really truly honor and anchor in these say, this space of being where we're allowing all of our feelings and stuff to be there. So it's like to summarize that, I believe that we are all on this very evolutionary trajectory that is allowing us to unite in ways that maybe if we did it a long time ago, we may not have been ready for what's to come. If we were to try to do what we're doing a long time ago, maybe we wouldn't have been ready for what's to come. So I believe the strength that it's like who we became in the process of this toxic masculine energy field is something that I'm finding has been great medicine to me.
like recognizing and honoring within myself that which, you know, it can be labeled toxic or whatever, but seeing who I became in the process of that, you know, I don't think that could have happened any other way unless, you know, it like only going into that experience. You know, it's like sometimes that's how you make a diamond, is by heat, time, and pressure. And sometimes when we're you know, sometimes when we're like pressed, we just get compressed and compressed till it actually like transmutes and becomes a pure crystal diamond. You know, that carbon turns into crystal. And I believe that's kind of what's happening within our energy fields, because what we're starting to see, you know, is a more united world. You know, despite everything that's going on, everything is actually uniting in more ways than we can even imagine, you know, because in some way, the more that we have these conversations, the more that we realize the certain undesirable parts of our experience and just love that anyway in that, and to really come into an acceptance of that, that actually it empowers women to rise into their divine feminine, and thus creating this pure circuitry of like male female totality, where in some sense, like you know, when that's fully established, that I believe, you know, I dream of a world of no wars. I dream of a world where gardens reign free and everything. Sorry, there's dogs barking. Okay. Yeah, you know, I dream of a world where our kids can play free without the fear of any financial or systemic oppression, you know, where we can all be truly provided for and abundant. And I believe that we had to go through these experiences of dark nights to help us appreciate the sunshine. And yeah, so that's my share there. Thanks for receiving.
Okay, so I was muted. If anybody wants to unmute and touch on what Joseph said, go ahead right now. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next person. But you know, I really love that what you said, and damn if we're not going to appreciate it so much, because wow, what trauma we've gone through recently.
Truly, and like it's all about who we became in the process of that trauma. You know, who we chose to become. Even in the darkest night, you know, I found that like, I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't go through really hard and intense experiences that showed me or gave me an opportunity to choose who I wanted to become in that process. And I think that's so important to really lean into it, you know, just lean into the shit and just go.
Yeah, accept it, and because what you reveal, you can heal. What you resist will persist. Mm-hmm. So let's move on now. We have Tony. You had your hand up next, I believe. So go ahead, unmute yourself, and yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I really appreciated what I don't remember who said it, but said something about like our connection with nature, how this situation in on planet Earth right now with the balance of the masculine and the feminine, or like the incompatibility or like disassociation, like with the masculine in particular. Like I think it started a long time ago when we started truly disrespecting nature, and decided that we would own nature, and that man was above nature. After reading Ishmael, the book Ishmael, that really brought to light a lot of things that I'd been thinking on, but never like truly solidified in my psyche. And realizing that we have such a disconnection with like where our food comes from, I think speaks a lot to our imbalance in the masculine as it relates to the feminine, as it relates to Mother Earth, you know. And that right there is a good way to understand why we're at where we're at. But I wanted to express something that happened recently, because now I identify myself as non-binary, and it was something that totally came out of left field for me because I've been a man my entire life, and I never recognized how, like, in my relationships, I was trying to be a man, and that's why there was so much like tension. There was so much like I had such a problem with trying to be everything that I wanted to be, because what I wanted to be was something that I wasn't. Like, there are aspects of the masculine that I wanted to exemplify, but what I was, how my certain energy expresses itself is different from what society deems masculinity is, and what society deems like it means to be a man. And so recently I had an experience with my now partner that allowed me to recognize that I was holding up this, I was trying to exert my idea of what it means to be a man in relationships, and that's why they weren't satisfactory to me, and to the woman. I claim myself to be non-binary, and I'm only attracted to women, so I've only had relationships, romantic relationships with women, and I can see how it's hurt them, because I was in a place where I was trying to be something that wasn't actually just who I naturally am, and who I naturally am is great. There's nothing wrong with it. And I think I just wanted to speak on like how like men that express, that have like feminine expression, that have more feminine expression than masculine expression, get dragged through the dirt in our society, because they're not man enough, and they're deemed as, oh, like, so you're more feminine, so you're gay, or like, and like there's something wrong with that. And it's really truly sad to see how that's, you know, come through in our society. And I you know, I had experiences of like bullying when I was younger, because I was a very quiet kid, and I refused to like engage in conflicts in a negative way if somebody was like trying to like put me down or something. But I also recognize that it stems from my relationship with my father, who didn't hold that divine masculinity within him. So I never received what divine masculinity actually is. And so I internalized all of this, all of these like habits of what a man needs to be, and honestly pushed away um, a lot of learning of my own masculinity, because what I received was like, it was just harsh. Like the experience that I got from the main man in my life, who was my father, was so traumatic that I didn't want to work on anything masculine. I wanted to just feel into, and those are beautiful qualities. But it took a long time for me to like really understand what the balance is for me. And I think that's I can imagine that's the same for a lot of people that may be listening to this podcast. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on those things. I think that's speaking to a lot of what we're going through.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. You know, I, as a kid, you know, through school, everybody always thought I was gay for some reason, and I never understood why. And I think now it's because I was very gentle. I, you know, was very open to express myself. and I was just very balanced with my masculine and feminine. But it was weird. It was almost like the society was so against anything but heterosexual people that I I was so afraid to admit who I was for so long because of that fact. Like, I got this thing when I was a kid. I was just a little kid in Kalamazoo. Kellogg was trying to break the world record for biggest breakfast at one time. And on the corner, somebody handed me a pamphlet, and they were really nice. They were really polite. They handed me this book and was like, "Here, you're a kid. You can take this." And it was a comic, but it was a comic that was so hateful towards anybody but straight people. And I was like, "This is wrong. Like, there's something wrong about this." And like, how could somebody so nice and so polite and like seem fine hand me something so hateful and so just evil, it seemed like. And I totally agree with you. So thank you for sharing, Tony. If anybody has anything they want to say about that, go ahead right now. Ashton.
Let me unmute. Yeah, I love this question of why. Where does this stem from? What's like the root cause of all of this distortion? And it really makes me think back to like Egypt and the beginning of the dawn of time, and like we used to like have goddess leaders. We had female people like Isis leading entire tribes of people. Not that they were entirely benevolent themselves, but I think that like the patriarchy and the matriarchy and the balance of it, like I think men, like we became insecure and our own fear of having women be equal, not even higher, just equal, our own insecurity of that allowed us to essentially use our muscles and our force to, and among other things that we did to suppress femininity, not even just females, like for a long time you couldn't even read. You weren't allowed to learn how to read because I think this lack mentality, fear of like the other having equality, because we don't feel that like we're enough if other people are on the same level, level playing field. It really makes me think like it's so interesting and such a perfect topic, I think, for right now and what the world's going through. And now it's like I was thinking about like hair and like how I've always felt inspired to have like longer hair, and it's always been looked down in our culture for men to have longer hair because it's like, oh, literally my stepbrother and sister one time, they're like half my age and they're like, why do you have girl hair? I'm like, I didn't do anything to grow my hair. I just did nothing and then it grew out. And now you see women with short hair too. There's like this balancing act happening of men and women realigning with our own, like, as men, like remembering the feminine inside of us, and for women, like remembering their masculinity, and not in a distorted way either. So there's a lot on this subject, but I think a lot of it comes from like fear and like insecurity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh, so I have these braids here, and it's funny because I go to all these different homes to take care of older people, and they're an
Yeah.
older generation, so to like see their reaction to my hair, some of them don't even notice, but some of them are like,
Right.
"So, what's up with your hair?"
No, and it's funny. It's very materialistic culture. Like it's always been funny to me. And like, why are people so obsessed with the length of your hair? It's kind of boring. Like I'm like, don't you have better things to pay attention to? Like maybe society or like the way we live. Like me doing nothing and my hair grows out really bothers you that much? Where it's like that's the distorted toxic masculinity, thinking things need to be like perfectly in the box of what our belief patterns are, and femininity is like an open box. There's not really rules, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's even more interesting that like Jesus had long hair, Samson had long hair, like all these judgmental people about long hair like have figures that have long hair and they're I don't know ignoring that or something. I'm not sure.
Super hypocritical.
Yes. Cool. Well, thank you, Ashton. We'll move on. I think Mike, you had your hand raised for a while, so if you want to unmute yourself, you could go ahead.
Yeah, Ashton, I wanted to say I completely agree. I feel like we get a surge of empowerment when we visit like the other polarity. And no matter where you are, if you have short, a woman with long hair go short, she gets this new sense of empowerment and this strength, this masculine feeling of power. And same for a man, like I grew my hair out. And I really feel that dealing with my external environment, putting me in check with their reality, saying why this, why that, really helped me like find my own center and what really supports like my being and my way of flowing. Also, I wanted to congratulate Tony on your new identity. I think to be able to assist yourself and resistance to expression is crucial. And there's just so many, different perceptions on gender roles and all that. So just to not even partake in gender roles is enlightening. And the thing I wanted to touch on was the good boy reward system of the past masculine. They take the cue from the external environment, and that gives them the dopamine flush. And good boy, you did great, and that empowers them to feel a sense of masculinity. But moving forward, we generate that through our own courage, faith, willpower, and like just through God's source. And it's just the next wave of getting that, those oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin chemicals. I don't need somebody to say I did great. I don't need that external validation anymore. So I really feel that that cultivates the ability to now be vulnerable, because I'm not shutting down because I'm scared of not getting validated by something outside. So I can open up in a space of empowered men and just be myself, be vulnerable. And rather than the old paradigm of fear, I'm fearful of attack because you didn't validate me. Now I feel attacked and I need to shut down and be defensive, or else I'm not going to be that good boy that I'm told I need to be. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I had on that one.
Awesome. Well, I definitely appreciate that, and I think that's really a fine point to bring up, because people do praise you for being uber masculine and macho, and it's kind of beautiful to see all of that change. So thank you, Mike. We'll go on next if we can. I lagged there a little bit, but Joe, you have your hand raised, so why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself? What's up?
Well, just eating this whole conversation up. I'm loving hearing what everybody's got to say. It's been beautiful, enlightening. Everybody's pretty much said everything that I would have said, but to just, expand on it, the concept of like patriarchy taking over and going out of balance with matriarchy, I think a lot of warfare in Western culture has been to blame. Think about the expansion of the West, and like we go conquer new lands or conquer people, pretty much all of North and South America. Indigenous populations who were in harmony with the land, they were completely eradicated and pushed to the edges of the continent. And I don't know, it's an extremely complex issue, and we can just basically patriarchy is the issue at the root of it all, you know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, we got quite the patriarchy here on this planet.
yeah.
Cool. All right, Brent, go ahead.
Well, I think what's really important to understand, and I think it's something that's we're beginning to come to grips with as a society as a whole, is just learning to understand what the differences are between the divine masculine and the divine feminine. I mean, when you think about the divine feminine, it has to do with things like feelings, emotion, intuition, all the things that are mysterious. They come from deep down within inside. And then when you look at the divine masculine, you're dealing with things that are rational, outward, and in many ways more superficial. And when we've come out of the age of reason that arose during the Renaissance and so forth, the rise of science, the rise of learning how to look at things materially, that whole masculine energy just like really took off and really settled itself in place and became the dominant ruling, paradigm for so many years. Uh, and it's never been put into check at any point. It's allowed to just keep going and getting stronger and getting bigger. And it kept pushing the divine feminine down. The divine feminine was being seen as irrational, illogical, things that really weren't worth pursuing or taking advantage of. The idea was, what could it possibly have to offer? Well, that's a big part of the reason how women ended up being put into a subservient position. And it's also a big part of how men had to, you know, bury their feelings and not let that side of themselves come out. And that burial, again, led to a toxic buildup that, wasn't doing men any good, um, and has now kind of reached sort of a tipping point. And I think what we're seeing now overall is that we're reassessing both sides. We're beginning to understand what it is to allow the divine feminine to come through and what it is to allow the divine masculine to come through, and finding a new way to strike the balance between the two. The important thing I think that comes out of that was something that Tony mentioned, was the idea of having to unlearn everything we've always been taught. And that's really hard because people don't like change. They're resistant to looking at things in a different way from what they're accustomed to. But it's necessary. And it's also important to kind of learn from history and look at, what we had coming before to help us understand what we want to come next. If we don't appreciate that, we're going to find ourselves in some really deep shit. And um, that's one of the things I'm finding a little troubling with some of the movements that are going on in society now, with trying to squelch history and so forth, because if we do that, we're not going to learn from our mistakes. Things are just going to get perpetuated. So it's important to understand who we are, where we were, and how we integrate those two to determine where we want to go. And I think that's the challenge that we're going through right now. And it's not easy, because essentially you're completely rewriting things. But in the long run, I really believe it's going to benefit us all in ways that right now we can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even in some of the movies that have been coming out recently, where it has like a gender reversal, where the woman is the strong character, and the man is the smaller. I won't say weaker, but not as strong. And like Kevin Hart, for example, he plays like a smaller masculine type, but in some of the movies he gets picked up by the women and carried around and stuff like that. And I think that that's a sign that it is being more accepting that we don't have to play to what we've been told is masculine or manly or how we're supposed to be, because we're all We all are who we are, and so I'm excited to have a more accepting world.
I think it's just going to make it more interesting in the long run. I mean, why have this rigid dividing line between this is this and that is that, and never the twain shall meet? I mean, let's get it more integrated, more like a beautiful mosaic, where you can allow both masculine and the feminine to integrate with one another and create a much more beautiful picture for everybody in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think even Ashton was saying something about that. Is, you know, what we've done with the feminine is repressed it, smushed it. We haven't allowed our women to be their most beautiful selves, to really, go forth and just be, this beautiful being, doing what they like to do. So by lifting each other up, being open and accepting to each other, and like you said, it's gonna be more beautiful. I think we'll have more beautiful art. We'll have more beautiful music, entertainment, like all that stuff. I think will be
Spirituality.
spirituality. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I'm reminded of is I heard stories that in the days of the early Christian church, since it was considered such a radical movement, they were not allowed to meet in big public places, so they had to have their ceremonies and rituals in the home. Well, the home was considered the place of the woman's turf. So when these rituals were held in those places, they had considerable say over how things went down, how they were conducted, what was done, and so forth. But then once the religion became big enough that it could become an institution and they could build their own structures like churches, well, you were off the woman's turf then, and you were on the man's turf at that point. And look at what happened to the role of women in religion from that point on. I mean, it's just a shame because they had such a valuable contribution to make at the beginning, and they've just been marginalized ever since then to supporting roles and secondary roles. And, we're just missing out on the other half of the equation. And when you compare that to, for example, like the religions of the East, you see a much greater balance between the two. And it's a much fuller and I think more representative picture of the way things really are in the world, and not the way that people who can bully others into submission want it to be.
Definitely. Definitely. I see Joe said that he wanted to comment on it. So Joe, I'd like to invite you to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, I like what was being said about, science and, how we've analyzed the importance of the intellect, and it's not so much about the feeling. If you look back at the beginning of the West, it's like, all these experiments and observations and mathematical advancements, and just we are removed from nature and we're seeing how reality is built, and it's all science, science, intellect, 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 intellect. And now we're getting to a point today where it's just the mathematics are so crazy, and the things that are going on are the quantum mechanics and the quantum physics, and really the quantum world is so interconnected that like things are happening simultaneously in parallel dimensions, and there's multiple events that are happening at the same time, but the observation collapses the probability of those events into the one thing. And it's like, this is the realm of the intellect, and this is the realm of the feeling, and this is the realm of the unconscious or the subconscious or the unmanifest, whatever you want to call it. And, we are ready for it today. And this was said earlier, the path that we took to get here today was necessary, because we wouldn't be ready for it. We wouldn't be ready for this weird, crazy quantum craziness in the 1600s. You tell them, hey, there's like parallel dimensions, and they'd be like, what's a parallel dimension? Take him to the headsman's rack and chop his head off. He's crazy. So we're here today, and we can honor the past and the trauma and the wars and the people and the artists and the free thinkers throughout the ages, and honor their shortcomings, and their achievements, and just honor them for being themselves. And here we are today, and we're making headway. We have groups like this, and this is important, bringing things back into balance. That's what I wanted to say.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Did you have any comment after that, Brent?
Well, yeah, actually, one other thing too is that one of the aspects that I write about a lot is the notion of conscious creation or law of attraction. And both of those philosophies essentially relate to the idea that we create the reality based on the beliefs that we hold. And the beliefs that we hold are based on two sources, intellect and intuition. Well, in this male-dominated paradigm, we've obviously got the intellect part down. We don't need to refine that any further. But when it comes to the intuition part, we've let that just be so disregarded. And yet it has input that's just as important as the intellect. And I think we're just now beginning to realize we need to start trusting that just as much as we trust the intellect. That's hard for a lot of us because, the intellect is rational and logical and all part of that masculine, male dominated paradigm stuff. And intuition is feminine, feeling based, intuitive. And yeah, that's not as reliable. We can't really go with that. And yet we're cutting out half the equation when we do that. So I think it's important, not just in terms of for us as individuals, but also in terms of just how we see our world unfold on a macro level, and that understanding that there's more to dealing with that than just being nice or being politically correct or something like that. It's something that actually has an influence that integrates into the materialization of the world that we experience. Now, the important question there then is, I guess we all have to ask ourselves, what kind of reality do we want to experience? Do we want one that's going to integrate all that? Or do we want to keep going the way we've been going and seeing things continuing to spin further down the tubes? So I think that's really important, especially for us as men, because, let's face it, we're still the ones who are dominating the storyline here. So if things are going to change, it has to begin with us. We have to be willing to allow that part of ourselves that we've ignored to come into the picture and make an impact in terms of the direction, the way the world goes from here on out.
Absolutely. And, I'm writing everybody's comments down, and we're going to have, a bunch of good episodes as we go deeper into these topics that we're just touching on in this first episode. I see Tony has his hand up, so we'll go to Tony, and then after that, we'll start to wrap it up and get into any final comments for anybody. So, Tony, would you like to come on and say some things? You got your hand up?
Wow. What was just said was literally a conversation that I was having with a group of people last night, which was like how being a white man, and I could say white passing or white or male passing human, I think it is the brunt of the work of unraveling the kind of grasp that the untamed masculine has held over humanity, and also the racism that is just existing as a system. It has to come from white men that are taking the reins and talking to other white men about these various systems that are preventing certain people from living freely. I feel that very strongly, and there's the reason it came up is because I've had these experiences where I'll have like another white person in the room, or like it'll be another man in the room, and they'll like say something that's either misogynistic, or they'll say something that's a little bit racist, and they like almost do like a head nod or like a certain gesture to like, are you on my team? Are you, is this safe to say? Like, and it's so frustrating if it's like, you know, somebody that you love very dearly, or you've just had a really good conversation with them until this point. It's like, like this, and it's like it's on us to like really get into that conversation and discern if this is something I really want to like get into right now or play the long game. Um, and that's kind of, it sucks to have to be in that position, but it's like there's there's many people that are like forced to be in that position all the time, and have are on the receiving end of a lot of this trauma. um just it's it's just mind blowing that like we're in the situation that we are in general. There was another point that I was going to say, but I think that was the one that was meant to come through.
Awesome. You know, I agree with what you said, and having these conversations, you know, as a white man, or even just a, you know, a masculine person, or whatever we consider ourselves to be, is healing it, because as we said at the beginning, what we're revealing, we are healing. So that's what we're doing with these conversations. We'll go ahead and we'll begin to wrap it up. So any final comments that anybody has? Tony, since you're still on, we'll go with you. Do your final comments for the episode.
Cool. Well, I just wanted to say thank you for this opportunity to speak on this. I feel very much in my life that I'm a novice in so many so many fields, and as I'm just starting a podcast with Project Bring Me to Life, I've never done a podcast before, so it's a really big learning experience, and a lot of my life kind of feels like it's just on the whim. I just like figure things out as I go, and it kind of does speak to like our society doesn't have like a lot of institutional like educational, like we grow up not learning about divine masculinity, or like divine femininity, or um like how to like if we don't have like a parent that is competent in like if we don't have like a father that is competent in teaching like how to work on a car, or like how to like manage your feelings, or like any of those things, like you grow up having to like unlearn so much just conditioning and just like wrong like lessons. And um you know, a women come on the brunt of that a lot of times, and it's something that I'm working to heal within myself, and learning to be listening, and learning to be authentic, and learning to um, be open, be open to learning more ways that I can be of service to other people, um, and not have to, you know, like I guess the thing that was coming through is about like asserting boundaries, and not being over assertive with boundaries. Like assert your boundaries, be competent in it, but also not like being forceful with those boundaries. um because I think like when we are just starting to get in touch with like our masculinity, and like even women, like when they're just starting to get into being able to enforce their boundaries and learning how to do that, it can come off as like really harsh at first. And it's because it's like it's trying to assert your power. It's trying to step into that power, and it's uncomfortable, and so it's like a shaky thing. And I'm just here for trying to learn and um discuss how to live into those necessary aspects of masculinity more competently and more authentically, so we can just be the change that we wish to see in the world. I'm really grateful for this whole thing. Thanks to everybody.
Definitely. And you know, it can be a lot to unpack all this trauma. It can be a lot to relearn how to balance these two aspects. And that's why it's important that we come together and we hold space for each other, because having a community like this makes it, you know, much easier. So we'll go ahead, go to Joseph for your final comment. Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Awesome. Yeah. So totally would love to follow up with all that, and really, yeah, you know, it's really up to us. It's really our time now, because we recognize that we all have, you know, just as you were saying, Greg, that, you know, it's still in our hands. Like, it's still in like the male, you know, we sort of are still running the show a little bit. So it's great that we're coming here at a council to discuss on how to use that properly, and how to actually give back in a way that allows women to feel free, to allow the divine feminine to express itself fully, and for us to really hold each other accountable to a you know, a more peaceful and grounded way of existence. And yeah, you know, it's a lot to come into these circles. I know this is like one of the most healing things that's been for me, to come into these spaces and to share vulnerably, you know, allowing ourselves to be sensitive, allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, because I think that cultivates a practice in a way that allows for other people to do that too. You know, I feel like in some way, the more that I allow myself to feel comfortable and you know, in myself in a way that's confident, it allows other people an opportunity to see what that looks like, and to maybe have that code if they, you know, when they couldn't see it before. So permission is huge, you know. So it's like, I feel it's as soon as we give ourselves permission, you know, I think that's like been a very healing thing for myself, is like giving myself permission to be who I am, to allow my feelings here, and in some sense, like reparenting ourselves in like a mother and father dynamic, because, you know, nobody's perfect, and of course we've inherited certain things from our parents that may be like undesirable or not ideal, but, you know, I think it's always within our hands that we're always able to, you know, choose who we wish to become, you know. And by doing that, by like coming into our own space of awareness, and to reparent ourselves, to you know, like a lot of work that I do is to like go into my inner child, and to go and be like my father, be the ideal father that I wish my child would have wanted in that moment. And in that same token, you know, giving myself that motherly love that I wish I could have had. You know, it's like, if I didn't get it from them, or if I didn't get it from anything, like, it still needs to come from somewhere. So it needs to just like come through me. And that's kind of like what we do as artists and as dreamers and philosophers and things like that, is sort of in the realm of pulling from the unmanifest and bringing that into manifest. So just totally inviting in that super cool modality there. And just so much love to you, CeeLo, and all the fellow brothers in this circle, and to all the ones I had to leave real quick. It's been an honor, and I look so forward to sharing more of this topic here, because I feel it's stuff like this that the world really needs right now, and can be a spark in the dark, if you know what I mean. So yeah, thank you all. Joe, signing out.
Cool. Thank you. And you know, we're gonna do this the first Tuesday of each month, so we'll have plenty of episodes, you know, as we get it going. And I love what you said about imagining yourself as like your younger self's dad, providing you everything that you need. That's very healing, and I think it would be a wonderful meditation to do. So we'll go ahead and go to Joe. What final comments do you have for us today?
I just want to take one big deep breath with the group, if you will. I want to express my gratitude to you all. There's really nothing I really want to add. I just want to express gratitude. Thank you, CeeLo, for cultivating this space and creating this container. I just want to thank every single person on here. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Joe. Mike? No? John?
Brett.
Brett. Sorry. And thank you, CeeLo. And Ashton. And I guess Mike left, right?
Yeah, Mike left.
Okay. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor holding this space with you all. And I look forward to being back. So thank you.
Sweet. Thank you, Joe. Okay, Brent, what are your final words for this episode?
Well, I just wanted to pick up on something that Joseph mentioned about the idea of giving ourselves permission on so many fronts. But for me, I think the most important thing for us to remember is to give ourselves permission to realize that we're all more than we seem to be. And I think the word seem is really important there, simply because we've allowed ourselves to become so convinced that we're just this finite little package and that we can't expand at all. And that's so not true. That by going inside and seeing our feelings, particularly those that we've long ignored, we can become so much more both for ourselves and for the world at large. And given the way things are right now, boy, do we need that.
Definitely.
So I want to say thank you so much for setting this up. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part. Thank you to everyone for being willing to listen to the musings of an old fart like me. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to future editions.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It's good to have your perspective seen as you came from a whole, a different generation, and I think all of us coming together, all the generations, all the types of sexes or whatever they're considered. It's going to be really powerful that we're all coming together, working towards a goal for more equality and unity. So thank you to everybody who's listened, whether live or on demand. I would love for you to comment and let us know what you thought. And if you have any suggestions for any of the next episodes, please leave them in the comments wherever you are listening. We really appreciate all of you so much, and we wish you all a great day. Thank you. And